The humans wasted no time. While the Veltrax advisors debated the finer points of strategy, the human contingent got to work. Tools clanged, sparks flew, and the sound of shouted instructions filled the docking bays as they prepared for a mission that no one else dared to attempt. The humans didn't wait for approval or guidance. They improvised, adapted, and acted. One of the Veltrax engineers observed in stunned silence as a human demolitions expert, Miller, disassembled a piece of Veltrax technology with reckless abandon. "You can't just," the engineer began, but Miller cut him off with a grin. "I can, and I just did," Miller said, holding up a modified device that now resembled an oversized grenade. "Your energy core? Turns out it makes a hell of a boom when you destabilize it. Thanks for the donation." The Veltrax engineer looked appalled. But there was no stopping the humans. They weren't bound by the same cautious methodology that defined the Veltrax approach to warfare. Their tactics were born from necessity, from centuries of surviving on a planet that seemed determined to kill them at every turn. Captain Rena reviewed the team's progress, nodding as each specialist reported in. The hacker, Vega, had managed to interface with the Veltrax's tactical network, exploiting its vulnerabilities to create a backdoor that could be used to disrupt Shredder communications. Ace, the pilot, was fine-tuning their dropship to ensure it could handle high-speed evasive maneuvers in the chaotic battlefield they were about to enter. Dr. Solon, the biologist, was running simulations to predict the Shredder's adaptive capabilities, hoping to identify a way to stay one step ahead. Meanwhile, the Veltrax leadership watched with a mix of fascination and unease. These humans worked with a level of confidence and aggression that bordered on arrogance, yet their results were undeniable. "Do they always operate like this?" one Veltrax officer asked another. "From what I've read, yes," the other replied. "It's unsettling but effective." As the preparations continued, a curious thing happened. The Veltrax soldiers, initially wary of their human counterparts, began to observe and even mimic their methods. They watched as humans adjusted their weapons on the fly, scavenged parts from unrelated systems, and turned what seemed like chaos into coordinated efficiency. One young Veltrax soldier approached Miller, hesitant but curious. "Your methods are unorthodox. How do you know they will work?" Miller looked up from his work, his grin returning. "We don't. That's the fun part." The soldier tilted his head, confused. "But what if you fail?" "Then we fail." "But we don't plan to," Miller said simply, turning back to his task. Captain Rena took note of these interactions. The Veltrax soldiers were starting to adapt, to think less like cautious tacticians and more like the humans they were learning from. It wasn't an easy transition, but it was necessary. That evening, as the humans and Veltrax gathered for a final briefing, Rena addressed them all. "You've been trained to fight a certain way," she began, her voice carrying across the room. "And that way has kept you alive until now. The Shredders don't play by your rules. They adapt, they overwhelm, and they don't stop. The only way to beat them is to out-adapt, outthink, and outlast them." She paused, letting her words sink in. "That's what we do. We don't fight fair. We don't play by the rules. We fight to win, no matter what it takes." The Veltrax soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, but there was no mistaking the determination in their human allies' eyes. Over the next several hours, the humans and Veltrax worked together to refine their strategy. The plan was bold, dangerous, and filled with risks that no Veltrax commander would have considered acceptable. But with humanity leading the charge, it seemed possible. The humans proposed using the Veltrax's own technology against the Shredders, turning their advanced communication systems into a weapon. The Veltrax advisors balked at the idea, citing the potential for collateral damage. "Collateral damage?" Rena said, her voice sharp. "The Shredders don't leave survivors. Either we stop them, or there won't be anyone left to worry about collateral damage." Faced with the stark reality of their situation, the Veltrax relented. As the humans finalized their preparations, Dr. Solon approached Rena with a grim expression. I've been analyzing the data from previous encounters, Solon said. The Shredders adapt faster than anything I've ever seen. Even our most unpredictable strategies might only buy us a few minutes before they counteract them. Then we'll make those minutes count, Rena replied. The next day, the combined human Veltrax force gathered for the final briefing. The Veltrax commanders outlined their roles in the mission, emphasizing the need for precision and coordination. When they finished, Rena stepped forward. "Let me make one thing clear," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "This isn't just a mission. This is survival. You don't fight for glory, for pride, or for honor. You fight because if you don't, there won't be anything left to fight for. Stick to the plan. Watch each other's backs, and remember, every second we gain, every life we save, is a step closer to victory." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the soldiers like a heavy cloak. For a moment, there was no distinction between human and Veltrax. They were all fighters, united by a common enemy. As the meeting concluded, Rena turned to her crew. "Get ready. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy what it means to survive." In the quiet moments that followed, the humans and Veltrax prepared themselves for the battle ahead. Each knew the stakes, the risks, and the likelihood that not all of them would make it back. But they also knew that failure was not an option. The Veltrax, for all their reservations, began to see humanity in a new light. These were not just warriors. They were survivors, relentless and unyielding. And in that, the Veltrax found a spark of hope. The battlefield was chaos. The humans and Veltrax deployed together. Their coordinated strike, teams descending into the heart of Shredder-controlled territory. The terrain was unrecognizable, an amalgamation of twisted metal and organic decay, a grim testament to the Shredder's relentless consumption. Every step forward felt like walking into the maw of a beast. The Shredders came at them in waves, their forms grotesque and ever-changing. Limbs morphed into blades, torsos expanded into organic cannons, and their glowing, predatory eyes locked onto every new target with unerring precision. They didn't just attack. They swarmed, adapting to counter whatever strategy was thrown at them. But this time, they faced something different. Rena led from the front, her voice sharp and decisive over the comms. "Keep moving. Don't give them time to learn. Hit hard, hit fast, and fall back before they can adapt." Her team moved with precision, breaking into smaller units to avoid presenting a unified target. Ace piloted the dropship above, weaving through anti-air fire as though it were a dance. His voice crackled over the comms. "Package is ready. Just say the word." "Hold until the breach," Rena replied, her rifle firing 3 clean bursts that tore through the nearest shredder. Its body collapsed, only for another to rise from the wreckage, more armored than before. On the ground, Miller unleashed his modified explosives, laughing as the blast tore through clusters of shredders. "They don't like fire much, do they?" he remarked, tossing another incendiary grenade. Vega, stationed behind the front lines, worked furiously on her terminal. "I'm in their network, but they're learning faster than I can disrupt them. This system isn't just adaptive. It's alive." Her fingers moved with desperate speed, her face lit by the glow of shifting data streams. Dr. Solon's voice came through next, calm but urgent. "Confirmed. They're incorporating your attacks into their physiology. If we don't escalate, we'll lose our advantage within minutes." "We don't need minutes," Rena replied, switching to her team's private channel. "Ace, deliver the package." On it, Ace's dropship swooped low, releasing a payload of destabilized energy cores repurposed into high-yield bombs. The resulting explosions ripped through the shredder ranks, momentarily halting their advance. The Veltrax soldiers, inspired by the humans' relentless aggression, fought with a newfound ferocity. They moved faster, thought quicker, and took risks they never would have considered before. One Veltrax sniper, perched on a makeshift vantage point, took down a shredder seconds before it could reach a wounded soldier. Another, armed with a human-designed flamethrower, cleared an entire corridor of advancing enemies. But the Shredders were not so easily defeated. From the wreckage of their fallen, new forms emerged, bigger, stronger, more resistant to fire and explosives. Their tactics shifted, targeting the humans' weak points with unsettling precision. "They're closing in," Miller shouted, covering a retreating squad with suppressive fire. "Fall back to Rally Point Bravo," Rena ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Vega, I need that network down now." "I'm trying." Vega snapped, her frustration mounting. "They're countering faster than I can." "Wait." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "There's a command node in their system. If we take it out, it could destabilize their entire operation." "Location?" Rena demanded. "Half a click north. Buried under that structure," Vega replied, marking the coordinates on their HUDs. Rena made the call without hesitation. "Miller, Solon with me. Everyone else, hold the line. If we don't come back, you keep fighting." The Veltrax soldiers looked to their human counterparts, their expressions grim but determined. For the first time, there was no hesitation in their ranks. They nodded, ready to do whatever it took. Rena's team moved quickly, navigating the treacherous terrain with practiced efficiency. The Shredders seemed to sense their intent, diverting more of their forces to block their path. Solon analyzed the swarm's behavior in real time, relaying critical data to the team. "They're funneling us," Solon warned. "Trying to force us into a kill zone?" "Then we don't play along," Rena replied, adjusting their route. "Miller, clear us a path?" "With pleasure," Miller said, planting a series of charges that detonated in a chain reaction, carving a fiery corridor through the Shredder forces. The team reached the structure, a pulsating mass of biomechanical horror. Tendrils of organic matter writhed and pulsed, protecting the command node hidden within. "We're here," Rena said, her rifle scanning for threats. "Vega, tell me how to kill it." "It's integrated with the rest of their network," Vega explained. "You need to overload it. The energy cores should work, but you'll have to plant them directly on the node." "Understood," Rena said. She turned to Miller. "You're up." Miller grinned, his hands already working to prepare the cores. "Cover me." As Miller advanced, Rena and Solon provided cover fire, holding off the Shredders converging on their position. The creatures were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Solon's precision shots and Rena's unyielding presence kept them at bay, but it was clear they couldn't hold out forever. "Almost there," Miller shouted, planting the last core. "Detonating in 10. The team fell back, fighting every step of the way as the Shredders closed in around them. The countdown ticked down, each second feeling like an eternity. When the cores detonated, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. The structure imploded, sending a shockwave that rippled through the battlefield. The Shredders froze mid-attack, their forms convulsing as the network destabilized. "They're retreating," someone shouted over the comms, disbelief evident in their voice. "Not retreating," Solon corrected, resetting. "We've bought time, but not much." Rena's voice cut through the comms. "Then we make the most of it, regroup, and prepare for Phase 2. This isn't over." The battlefield quieted, the immediate threat subsiding. But the humans and Veltrax knew better than to celebrate. The Shredders would return, stronger and more dangerous than before. For now, they had won a brief reprieve. And in that fleeting moment, they proved something the galaxy had almost forgotten. When pushed to the brink, humanity did not break. They endured. As the Shredders fell back to regroup, the battered human Veltrax alliance took stock of their situation. The battlefield was littered with debris, organic remnants of the Shredders, and the lifeless forms of fallen soldiers. The cost had been steep, but the fight wasn't over. Rena stood amidst the chaos, her team rallying around her. "We've shaken them," Rena said, addressing both humans and Veltrax. "But it's not enough. They'll return stronger, and we won't get another chance like this. Ace's voice crackled through the comms from his dropship above. Recon shows movement in the eastern sector. They're pulling back to regroup, but they're not retreating. We've got a small window before they stabilize. Vega, pale and exhausted from her earlier hacking efforts, chimed in. The shockwave destabilized their local network, but I'm detecting adaptive signals. They're reconfiguring, likely transferring command to a secondary node. She paused, her voice grim. If we don't take out that node now, they'll evolve past our current strategies. The Veltrax commander, Krentau, stepped forward, his tone hesitant but resolute. We've learned from your methods, but this level of aggression, are you certain we can survive another assault? We don't survive by playing it safe, Rena replied, meeting his gaze. This is our shot. If we let them recover, there won't be a second one. The Veltrax soldiers nodded, their expressions determined. The lessons they had learned from the humans had reshaped their thinking. They weren't just defending anymore. They were fighting to win. As the team prepared for the final push, Miller approached Rena. If they've got a secondary node, it'll be even better protected than the first. You know what that means. I know, Rena replied. She turned to Solon. What's the likelihood they've adapted to our explosives? High, Solon said without hesitation. We'll need to hit them with something they can't counter fast enough. What about a chain reaction? Miller suggested. If we overload their core systems, we could collapse their entire network. That could work, Vega interjected, her voice regaining some of its strength. But you have to plant multiple charges deep within their territory. And once they realize what you're doing, they'll throw everything at you. Sounds like a typical Tuesday, Miller said with a smirk. The plan was set. The final assault would be a coordinated strike, designed to destabilize the Shredder's network permanently. The humans would take point, using their unconventional tactics to breach the enemy's defenses. The Veltrax, now armed with human-designed weapons and strategies, would provide support, ensuring the charges were planted and detonated. As they moved out, the atmosphere was tense but determined. Every soldier knew the odds were against them, but the fear was tempered by purpose. The Shredders were waiting for them. The moment the team entered the eastern sector, the creatures launched their counteroffensive. The swarm was larger, more coordinated, and more lethal than anything they had faced before. Limbs transformed into organic weapons, and their forms bristled with newly evolved defenses. Rena led the charge, her rifle blazing as she cut through the first wave. Stay together. Keep moving. We don't stop until the charges are set. The Veltrax soldiers, now fighting with a level of aggression that would have been unthinkable before, held the line with the humans. They moved with precision, adapting to the chaos around them. Solon relayed vital data as the battle raged, identifying weak points in the Shredder's formations. Focus fire on their flank. Disrupt their cohesion. Miller, carrying the bulk of the charges, pushed forward despite the onslaught. I've got the first one ready. Cover me. The Shredders adapted quickly, redirecting their forces to block his path. But the humans in Veltrax countered with brutal efficiency, clearing a path for Miller to plant the first charge. 1 down, 3 to go. Miller shouted as the charge activated. Vega's voice came over the comms. They're rerouting their forces. They know what we're doing. You'll have to move faster. Rena responded without hesitation. We don't stop. Miller, Solon, split off and plant the next charges. Vega, guide us. The team fractured into smaller units, each fighting their way to a designated target. The Shredders intensified their attacks, their forms shifting to counter the humans' weapons. Despite the mounting pressure, the charges were planted one by one, each detonation further destabilizing the enemy's network. By the time the final charge was set, the battlefield was a scene of utter devastation. The Shredders were collapsing, their forms convulsing as the network stability crumbled. But the victory came at a cost. Veltrax and humans alike fell in the final moments, their sacrifices ensuring the mission's success. Rena's team regrouped at the extraction point, battered but alive. The last explosion rippled through the Shredder's territory, a massive shockwave that obliterated their remaining forces. As the dust settled, the battlefield fell silent. The Shredders were gone, their network destroyed. Rena stood amidst the survivors, her gaze sweeping over the Veltrax and human soldiers who had fought together to achieve the impossible. "We did it," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. Krental stepped forward, his expression one of respect and gratitude. "We wouldn't have survived without you. Your methods, your courage, they've changed us." Rena nodded. Survival isn't about strength alone. It's about adapting, about fighting for something bigger than yourself. As the survivors prepared to leave the battlefield, the alliance between humans and Veltrax had been forged in fire. The Veltrax, once cautious and reserved, had learned to embrace the relentless spirit of humanity. The Shredders were defeated, at least for now, but the humans knew the fight wasn't over. It never was. As they boarded the dropship, Rena turned to her team. "We'll be ready when they come back. And next time, they'll learn that humanity doesn't just survive, we endure